So, welcome, Liz. It's great to have you with us on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, me too, because you are all about sales and money and profitability. And I can't wait to get stuck in to all of that because I know this is a topic that many women shy away from, particularly in reality. When it comes to asking for the sale, it's going to be like, oh, well, let me tell you some more. But before we get stuck into that, I'd love to know, how did you get started in your business?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. When I was born, I started. No, I was 18 when I started my first business. So I was 10 years side hustle, 10 years now full time. The business I started 20 years ago, I was actually cleaning out closets and selling the clothes on eBay back when eBay just started, and you had to like code the pages to make a MySpace fancy to stand out. So that was my like introduction to entrepreneurialism. Built it kind of alongside my ascending career. It was great, loved it, but didn't know what I didn't know. I actually got approached by a couple investors with the business that I was running, and that just scared me, and I ran away from it. A lot of women do this. I was a baby, so I don't beat myself up too much about it anymore, but I do recognize that that's a very real thing. Fast forward to about 10 years ago now. Post recession, trying to revive the business, et cetera, et cetera. And I find out I'm pregnant, and I'm also realizing that I'm going to be a single mom sooner than later. And if I'm ever going to do this entrepreneurial thing, it's either going to be now or I'm going to have to wait 10, 18 years. And that was just the conversation in my head. So I was like, all right, we're doing it. I took a EPT, took out an LLC, and I was like, let's get this party started. There was a franchise type company that had been presented to me doing web design. And because I had the previous experience with the HTML and stuff, like websites weren't scary or weird to me. I was like, yeah, I've done this, no big deal. So partnered with them and started a web design and marketing agency, and that's what got me out of corporate. That was the first full-time business that I was running. Helped me to become a single mom, and then over time, the Disney princess version is that I transitioned my business over time by listening to my clients, and Selling with Service was born, and the Sales School for Entrepreneurs was born. And those aren't lies. You just guarantee yourself that there's a lot of BS that happened underneath all of that. That is totally the buttoned up version, but it was not easy, but worth it.
Yeah, and I love that you've brought that up because, in fact, I was just having a conversation today earlier on Clubhouse about why do so many people quit too soon, and it's that they think it's going to be easier. They think they're going to launch a business and be profitable and sell it within a few months, and of course it doesn't ever happen that way. You may be lucky and stumble on a first few clients because typically your first few clients are closer than you realize,
Yeah.
but then it gets hard to maintain that over time. So how did the reality of starting that business match up to what you thought it was going to be?
I mean, night and day, right? I mean, I was in the network marketing space, so it's like lifestyle business and, passive income and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh, I'm doing my vision boarding and I'm mapping out like the next 3 years. And it's like, oh, we're going to be living on a beach and like traveling the country and like whatever. Not even close, not even close. And then also, becoming a single mom, he's an abusive alcoholic, so like these are real things that people don't talk about that happen behind the scenes, but like there was a lot of life happening behind the scenes, and you can't really like grow and thrive when you're coming home to chaos every day. So layer that in. Now that I look back, I'm like, oh my God, it's a miracle that I physically survived, literally survived, and that my business survived. Of course, I'm not going to thrive in those years, but we got by. Like we did okay. So the expectation was like Tiffany's and beaches and like traveling the world and like whatever. And the reality was like a step above Walmart. Like we're okay-ish. And listen, I had my own time. I had my own schedule. I got to choose who I had conversations with and who I don't. I got to choose where physically I got to be and where I didn't. So like I had all of those things, which were huge pluses. And it would be every so often that I would have to stop and think and say, okay, even though like there's 9 out of 10 things on fire right now, I can be wherever I want to be right now. I don't have to be on anyone else's schedule. So it was a constant just realignment of like, yeah, but what is working? Yeah, but I am once where I only wanted, could dream of being. So it looked completely differently. It always does. And it's interesting because the universe does know best. They have to give us the lessons that we actually need to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that in my first business where I had put everything into my family, everything into my clients, nothing for me. And I'd also stepped far away from my purpose. And then it was kind of, well, I'm earning money, but I wasn't like you were. I didn't have a charge of my time because I'd just given that over to my clients. I was just totally looking at what they were doing. And I love that you managed to, despite all this chaos, keep that control in your business. And I think that's, we were just talking before we went live about how we, as women, too often we're waiting for permission from somebody. And I think I was totally in that. Oh, I need permission to say no to this client. And of course, you don't. It's your business. You can do what you want. So
Really hard thing when you're coming from the indoctrination of the employee mentality and thinking, where you do need, I mean, you need permission in school to go to the bathroom, for crying out loud. So it's really no surprise that as women who have been denied so many freedoms and access to normal things, that we do ask for permission and we do require it. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is like, it's normal to think that we need permission for things. It's we're not wrong, we're not broken for that. That's the way our society treats women. It's just a fact. So first thing I do is I remove the shame from that. Second thing I do is I pull out the pen and I'm like, what color would you like your permission slip in today? Permission to do whatever you want is granted. I've got all the colored pens, I've got all the colored sticky notes. Which one do you want it to look like? That's
yeah,
it.
absolutely. And it is that easy. You're just flipping the switch and just starting to catch yourself when you're
Yep.
in those moments and say, hang on a minute, no, there is no wrong decision this today. I just make the one that I want to make. Go with it and trust yourself. I mean, that's a huge lesson that's been coming out of this podcast, is how our superpower as women is that we have this intuition, this gut, and it's all of our previous knowledge and experience, of course, that's giving us that intuition. But we've learned or been told or conditioned out of trusting that, because that's not how men work. And men have created the corporate environment that we've grown up in, and we've kind of learned that, oh, emotions are bad, gut feelings aren't trustworthy. And in fact, as women, they are both extremely good things and amazing tools to use in your business.
If we look at sales, I mean, I'm like sitting here, my heart is like, I'm fangirling. You're in my head, you're in my, like, everything as you're saying, like nailing it. So one of the things that, if you look at sales specifically, exactly what you're saying, women are better at sales. We close 11% higher than men, but only 20% of sales leaders are women, because men are out there teaching us their way to sell, which is the worst way to sell. But we're thinking it's what we're being taught, so it's what we have to do. But they're denying us our what we know to be true and right. It's so upside down and inside out and backwards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are certain men who are very vocal in the sales space, and I remember listening to them and it's like, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but it feels wrong.
Yes.
None of that feels like how I want to show up, how I want to treat my customers. It doesn't feel authentic or respectful, and I felt really bad for not wanting to do it this way. But as soon as I've done it my way, it's like, oh, this is actually really fun. And I've been teaching that to my clients, and they're like, can I really do this? It's like, please do what I advise, and then tell me how it feels. And they've always like, I want to go back to all my other clients now because I've let them down not doing this properly. And we had Lisa McLeod on the show recently, and she was saying that when sales is done right, people don't label it as sales. They label it as service, as caring, as all these things. So that's why I think we would need to redefine it for women.
Yes, 100%. My clients actually named my company Selling with Service, because that's exactly it. What I would teach them how to do it. And it sounds like a very similar approach to whatever it is that you're teaching, because it's the better way to do it. And I teach it to my clients. And the first thing that they say is, oh my gosh, this is so refreshing. And exactly what you say, they're like, I want to go back and apologize to people. I was like, you can do whatever you want if you want. And I've had some do it. They were like, I'm so sorry, I was weird. It works.
Yeah, exactly. So on the subject of sales, Why do you think it is something that women do feel a little bit uncomfortable with?
Well, I think all the things we were just touching on, that it's a really masculine dominated industry, if you want to call it an industry or trade or skill or whatever. Women are nurturers, men are hunters, right? So they're going to go out there and it's natural for them to kind of be chesting, pounding on their chest, and aggressive women are more like, nurturing and bringing us, back into the community. And I think it's also, we have to look at a very real systemic issue as it relates to money, that we've always been denied access to it. In the States, it wasn't until 1975 that a married woman was able to get a bank account in her own name without her husband's permission. And it wasn't until 1988 that a business owner was able to get a loan for her own business without a man's signature. So systemically, we have always been denied access to money. And oh, by the way, they never teach it in school. And oh, by the way, it's rude, taboo, icky to talk about it. And then all of a sudden we're cast into this, conversation around and about money. It's never been modeled. It's always been taught not to do it. And anything that we've seen has been the masculine way, which feels 1,000% inauthentic to us. So we're like trying on this like really uncomfortable sweater that's like 2 sizes too small. And we're wondering why it's not working for us. It's because we're trying to do what we see rather than know. It's the trusting ourselves rather than do what we know to be true. It just hasn't been modeled enough. And this is why I love getting out there and just kind of, permission to do what you feel is right, permission to try, permission to, have conversations, say words, all of that. But, we've never been allowed, and we're just not built the way that it's seen.
Yeah, I love that. I moved to Switzerland 16 years ago and I couldn't get a bank account then. It had to be like my husband's bank account. The only way, and none of everyone I met here, the women didn't have bank accounts, they didn't have access to their own money. The only way I got around that was because I got a job in a bank and they would only pay into an account that I owned with my name on it. So I finally had my own bank account. Woohoo, go rebel me. In 2004.
Unreal.
Unreal, right? I mean, it's changed now. But the
But if
other,
it's 2004 that it changed in Switzerland, like, that there are still places where it still hasn't changed.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Wow.
And but the interesting thing you said about, men have created the association with money. The origin of trade was in Egypt, and it was called sacred commerce. And it was the priestesses that, alongside the priests, but there were many, many priestesses who would go into the temples, raise their energy and their frequency, and go out into the marketplace and raise that. And the trade was seen as a way, one, to keep peace, but mostly for people to live their purpose, to share their talents with the world. And that's the way trade was born, which is completely the feminine way. But then they were, because everyone was so much in alignment with themselves and their beliefs, then there was no, the pharaoh couldn't influence anyone. There was no propaganda because we were like, no, that's not right. That doesn't feel true. I'm going to do it this way. So he destroyed all the temples, and ta-da, we have the world we have today. But going back to the origins, I'm always keen to share that story because, like, women, we invented this stuff. It got polluted along the way, but we need to claw it back and claim it for ourselves.
I love that. I love that story. I'm the daughter of a historian, so I mean, I just eat up all of these facts. I love it.
It's called sacred commerce if you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So what can women do to start overturning some of these limiting beliefs and these outdated systems that we've kind of been brought up in? How can we start to challenge those and make a difference for ourselves?
I think there's a couple ways to look at it. One is what we've been talking about, to acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with us. It's not something we can just like, oh, I'm better, oh, I figured out what it is and I'm better now. Like, this is a bigger issue than any of us can tackle in one conversation, right? It's systemic. So first we need to acknowledge that and remove any shame from it. And then there's two sides of the coin after that kind of big monkey is removed. One is you've got to have the tactics, like the tactical, actual, practical, what are the words that you say? And then the second side of the coin is you need to believe them. And that's an inside job. And that's the result of, it's kind of inside out and backwards, I'm sorry, but it's, you kind of have to do it to collect the new evidence so that you can believe it. You know, the clarity comes from conversation, confusion comes from thought. So we can sit and think ourselves into, but I feel better, and affirmations, and those aren't wrong things to do. You can just get yourself further faster by having conversations with other people. So it's really a function of those tactics of what do you say? How do you start creating new evidence for yourself? And I'll give a real simple formula so that, you know, the core, everything that I've created in selling the service, everything that I built in the sales school for entrepreneurs has really been built because I had to protect myself from myself. When I was transitioning from web design into marketing, business, coachy kind of stuff, I didn't know what I was for a while. All of a sudden I went from having like a thing that I was selling with a hard price tag. I had, you know, my team that I had to pay, etc. And then like retail markup, like it was math. Now I'm putting a number on myself and my services and my own conversations. Like, no, you know, it was a learning curve, like for sure, for sure. So I had to build tools to protect myself from giving it all away so I could actually start earning money. And a quick little formula that I've kind of distilled all of this down to of how to have a air quote perfect sales conversation. Most people think of a sales conversation like 50-50, 60-40, who's talking, who's listening. Mine's a 3-part equation because I think there's a big thing that's missing there. So it's 80, 15, and 5. 80% of any conversation is the other person talking, AKA you listening. That's where the gold comes from. 15% of the conversation is, this is what's missing from the other formulas. 15% of the conversation is where you're asking questions, period. If Alex Trebek wouldn't allow it on Jeopardy, it does not leave your mouth. It has to be a question. There's exceptions to that, like help me understand that better, tell me more about that. That's really interesting. Keep talking, or can you say that differently? Sentence expanders, right? To keep them talking. Those are technically not questions, but it fills that 15%. And then only 5% of any conversation is where I say permission to speak freely is granted. Only 5% of any sales conversation is where you can speak in full sentences. And I break that down even a little bit further into a little bit of introduction and a little bit of invitation towards the end. Everything else is asking a question. That's how you protect yourself from giving it away. And that's how you hold the bar at a higher level to really make sure that, you know, it's a solid conversation and a right fit alignment for both parties.
Yeah, I love that. And I 100% agree. It's all about the questions, because you can't sell to someone without their permission. And the only way you get permission is by asking questions and guiding them to find out, well, do they really have a problem that I can solve? And do they care enough about that problem to actually pay what I want them to pay me to solve it for them? So you only discover that from questions. And questions show your expertise as well. They show your insights, your ability to, and when they see that you know the right questions to ask, they assume that you are the expert and therefore you have the solution. And if they're on a sales call with you, they want you to be that solution. You've kind of already sold. You just
Yes.
have to not talk yourself out of that sale.
You already started with an A, right? Just like in school, you already started with an A. You just have to not screw it up. I love what you said. I have a phrase around that. It's that the expert asks, the amateur answers.
Yeah.
We've all been in those networking situations where it's like usually the financial services guy, and no disrespect to the financial services industry. I think they teach phenomenal things. I do a lot of trainings for them, but it's always the financial services guy that's like real quick to jump into a conversation and try to solve everyone's problem. And it's like, you'll grow out of it. We love it. We've all been there. If we haven't been there, we're not networking enough. But when we're so eager to solve the problem, we're in amateur energy. We're well intentioned, but the expert's going to sit back and say, okay, whatever they're saying right now is a symptom of a greater problem. And in order for me to actually give a valuable answer and a meaningful response, I need to peel a couple layers back, which means I need to ask a few more questions. You don't need to say anything to demonstrate your expertise. And exactly what you said, they're on the phone with you.
Yeah.
They've already checked the box that you're an expert.
Yeah, exactly. And typically your clients that are on a call, they maybe not, but they generally know what they want. What
Correct.
they don't know is what they need.
Mhm.
And they want to have more clients, but they don't know what they need to do to get those clients, for example. So it's only through questions you can help them identify that need. And even that is super valuable. Like, wow, I never realized that that was the cause of all of this. And so they have a start point. So even if you don't make the sale, you've already added a huge amount of value for them. And that's really a great sales conversation, is where both parties come out and feel, wow, that was great. We really had the chance to learn, grow, have that great conversation and add value, which is brilliant. And you're not going to sell to everybody. That's totally unrealistic. But if you can go away from that call feeling proud of how you've performed, then that's great. If you go away from that call thinking, I feel so awful about the way I performed, then that's not good.
Yeah. There's a great mindset trick that I like to introduce people to. They're already a client. They're already a client. From the moment you have your first intentional business conversation with them, they're already a client. And what that looks like is that you're not doing your thing for them, right? It's that you're serving, you're helping. You're not going to be weird with a client. They're already a client, then you're doing the things, you're saying the things, you're asking the questions, you're not afraid to get them back on your calendar. There's no chase energy. It's 100% service. Where this mindset needs to be buckled to is a very firm boundary, a very known boundary on where the actual work starts. When we don't know where the actual work starts, that's where we get weird in the courting process, in the prospecting process, because we're afraid that we're giving too much away and they're not going to need us anymore. Fear-based energy doesn't work. You're in sales energy, stop it. Just take a deep breath when you notice that you're in that space of fear and retraction. It's when you're in that energy of expansion that you're in service energy. And that's, they're already a client. I know exactly the point where I need to start working with somebody. I structure in sales school a way to work with people in what I teach, the invisible business model, and it's called power positioning, so that you can be empowered on that positioning line of where your work actually starts, and some tools to protect yourself from yourself, so that you can just give and love on them. And then that sales call is actually the first coaching call, because what you're walking them through is the biggest objection, which is a commitment to transformation. Everything else is downhill after that. Uphill. It's easy. Smooth sailing, whatever analogy you want to use. It's so simple after that. But when we think about that first conversation as a sales call, we're in this weird energy about converting and what happens if I don't get them. And we want it more for ourselves than we're being available to hold space and listen for them. And I actually had a client flip this around for me. He said to me, I'm introducing this concept to him. And he says, wait a minute. So what you're saying is that they're already a client. I said, yep, that's what I'm saying. He says, so the only person who's going to change the nature of that relationship, it's not going to be me, they're already a client. It's going to be them opting out. I was like, 100%. They're already a client. The only way that's going to change is if they opt out. And if they do, cool. No love lost. There's 7.5 billion in the people in the world. You'll find somebody else, right? And there's no such thing as one-way liberation. If they've decided it's not a right fit, on some level, it's not a right fit, and they just happen to see it sooner. It's all good. But the only person who's going to change that relationship is them. Other than that, they're already a client. All you have to do is figure out, is it noon on Tuesday? Is it 1,000 or 5,000? Like, what are we working with? Nothing to get weird about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything about what you just said. It's so, so powerful. And talking about that it's really coaching them through a decision, but how do you help them? I know you're known as the queen of closing, so I can't leave without asking you, how do you take them to make that final commitment? And I think particularly when your clients are women, so that the much as we have that fear of asking for money, they have that fear of investing money as well. So sometimes it's even though they know they want it, this is exactly the perfect thing for them, sometimes they're just scared as well. So how can we manage that process?
It's co-creating the close. It's an entire process that I teach. I recommend, and I teach, like I said, power positioning. We need to have a package, some way that we're slicing and dicing our time and services. Otherwise, we're just like water on a concrete, surface and we're going everywhere. We need to create some sort of masculine container that we can do our feminine work within, period. I don't believe too early in your business. Under the first 20 clients, 12 to 18 months, usually a similar time frame, that you should package and program yourself prematurely. I think it's a detriment to your business. In those first 20 or so clients, one-on-one clients, and the first 12 to 18 months, as you're really figuring out what it is that you're doing, when you have the skills to co-create the close and you know kind of what a reasonable container looks like to serve someone, here's some phrasing for you when they start having concerns about money or whatever. Here's some phrasing. I've never not been able to make it work with someone when all the other stars are aligned. So let's take money off the table for a second. Let's go back and talk about what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. Let's revisit that. Maybe we just need to right size the goal for the first time that we work together. If that's not selling the service, I don't know what is. That's not sales. That's saying you're already a client. Maybe noon on Tuesday doesn't work for you. Maybe it'll be 3 o'clock on Thursday. I don't know. Maybe 50 cents is where we start and we'll get you up to 5. I don't know. What works? I've never not been able to make it work with someone when all the other stars are aligned. Let's take money off the table for a second and take it back to the top and figure out what is this thing that we're trying to do together anyways. Maybe we tried to, accomplish the moon. I fire hose. Maybe I set the goal too high. I'll take ownership for that. And then you co-create the close through the process. It's very simple.
Yeah, I love that.
Though, it's a skill.
Yeah, and actually now you say that, I realize actually some of my best clients, that's exactly what's happened, that we've got to the end, we both really want to work together, we can see how that's going to work, but the two ways that I've proposed aren't quite working. So like, well, what else can we do here? And then we've invented a different way of working. I was like, right, well, great, let's start there, see how it goes. And it's been great. And it's as you say, it doesn't feel like selling. It feels like completely, hey, we're gonna get through this together, and it's gonna be amazing. And it always is.
Exactly. And this goes back to the permission slip thing. This does not mean, first of all, you can do whatever you want in your business. You can charge whatever you want to anyone at any time. You can slice and dice your time anyway, whatever you want, period. That is a complete sentence. And when you are co-creating a solution with a client, it is through the lens of service. So there's no sales energy whatsoever. It's a completely mutually agreed upon solution. There's no way you can go wrong in any of that.
Yeah, exactly. And how do people handle it if they're having those sales conversations and maybe they're transitioning into this more service style of selling and they haven't done that and they don't get the yeses that they want? How do you advise them to take those no's and in a positive way?
So that's just a great milestone that it's an indicator that the sales process, that somewhere in the sales process, something just needs to be tweaked. It's always through the lens of you're doing great. You got someone into your world. You got them on your calendar. You had a conversation. Freaking huge. I mean, that's like 10 steps above a lot of people that are out there. So huge kudos to you. Now it's just a function of let's kind of look at that sales conversation. Let's reverse engineer your process. I bet you anything, there are a couple steps missing, even one step missing from that sales process, creating a misalignment of expectations. And it is that simple. You introduce one little step, you tweak one little step, whatever that is, I can almost guarantee you it's a teeny itty bitty tiny thing, itty bitty little thing. Not good. We don't have to blow up the business and reinvent the wheel. It's usually like, did they have an intake form prior to the call? Did you set the intention of the call as a networking call, or did you set it as a sales call? And if it was a networking call, did you try to bait and switch it into a sales call? Because that's a huge no-no. We don't do that. But it's somewhere along the line that there was just a little tweak and a mismanagement of expectations. So let's just go find that and tweak it and then send you off on your way and watch your close rate skyrocket. Simple.
Yeah.
Always simple.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that you've touched on the process part there, because I think a lot of people don't have a process. And if you don't have a process, then you can't improve on it. You can't see what's working. And as you say, and always when I've had calls that didn't go according to plan, and I go back and say, well, what happened there? And I realize I didn't ask that question.
Mhm.
And it's always, there's a couple of little minor questions in my process that are actually big questions. They're the point where the person gets to reflect really that bit deeper, and yeah, and he's like, darn it.
Yeah.
But then you learn, and it's through that whole process. And every no teaches you how to get a yes when you
Mhm.
take the time to reflect back on that, I think. So
And
yeah.
and we can't take it personally. I think that's a lot
Mm.
of it too, is that masculine is fun. Men collect no's, right? Remember back when, I mean, I'm single, but remember back when we used to go to bars and see people and do things, and like you get hit on at the end of the night by the dudes, and like they're just going for whoever's available. They're just looking for a pulse. They collect no's. It's what they do. We don't operate like that as women. We are much more relationship based. We're more soft currency is what I would say. We're more people based than just, the stats, right? So energetically, it is going to feel a little off when we get a rejection, but we can't look at it like that at all. That it's simply an indication that there was a misalignment, period. It's either an energetic misalignment that they're picking up on and somewhere we didn't catch it, or it's a process misalignment that somewhere we dropped the ball. When I don't follow my own process, I'm like, oh my God, I got this. I teach it. I got it. I created it. Like, it's totally fine. I could do it with my eyes closed. When I miss a step in my process, guess who doesn't close? Guess
Yeah.
who doesn't close? Guess who teaches it and doesn't close? And then you want to talk about imposter syndrome? You want to talk about feeling like a failure when I don't close someone and I know exactly what it was. I got cocky. I didn't follow the script. I didn't send them the thing. Whatever it is, I can readily identify. And I'm like, you fool. But it's one of two things. It's an energetic misalignment that they picked up on, and bless them for that, because there's nothing more expensive than a wrong fit client. You don't want to be in someone's wrong energy, and you don't want them to be in the wrong energy in your tribe, right? That's just no fun for anyone. So it's either they caught an energetic misalignment or you had a process misalignment. It's not failure, it's not negative, it's not a no, it's evidence for what can we do to move it along. It's a Kaizen approach, it's a continuum. It's process improvement doesn't end. There is no there. Sorry. There's no there. Every conversation we're getting better. I give my students all the documents that are in Google Docs, and I give it to them that way specifically instead of a PDF, because I want them to take the script, make a copy of it so that it's a fluid document in their world. And I recommend at the end of every week, 2 weeks, once a month, depending upon your volume of sales calls, you go back through the pieces of paper that you had your notes on, and you look at what were the questions that you scribbled down, that you asked, that you didn't ask before. Do we need to work those into the script? What are the questions that are on here you don't ask anymore? Do we need to take those off the script? Where are you getting tripped up? It's a constant, it's a fluid, it's evolving. It has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that subject, of objections and no's, are there any times when you would recommend someone to object and say no to the other person on the call? So
100%. Absolutely. Discernment is the biggest thing. And knowing that they're already a client, are you going to recommend that your client do something that's not appropriate for them or that they're not ready for? Absolutely not. So it's the same thing when someone comes into a sales call in your world. How can you, in integrity, offer them something or move them into something that is not a right fit for them at the time? That's fear-based energy. It's just, we just, no, just, we don't do it. We just do not do that. There's always a something before that, or they're just not a right fit, and that's okay. And that's where you want to be able to refer them to another resource. Here's, my friend Sally would be able to help you better, or I've got this free training that I think would be all that you need right now. You never want to say, like, you're a horrible person, I don't want to work with you. Like, that's not how you handle that conversation. It's always to edify, right? It's always like, you know what? I think you've got a lot of the pieces in. I think you're doing great. I've got a training that's out there that could help you to kind of tweak this one thing. Take it. It's the take two and call me in the morning approach. Like, take the training, it's here, I'll send you the link, whatever, or go into your sales school, go into your bucket and be like, you know what, I've got this one thing behind closed doors, I'll send it to you. Take it, let me know if you implement it and it's working. come back, let's continue the conversation. If they're a wrong fit, they're not going to come back because the message isn't going to align with them. They'll weed themselves out, but you're doing it on a high note. I've had some people that I've done that with that I was just like, they're not ready. It's a slight off enough, whatever it is. And I'm like, take two and call me in the morning. Some of those people have become my biggest champions and advocates that always refer me to other speaking engagements, always send me clients, are the first ones to show up on my lives, liking and commenting on everything. They will never work with me, but there's still value. It's just not the right 100% alignment to become a client. And we need people in all the different places. So it's never a wrong.
No, exactly. And I think that's part of the power of a sales conversation done right, is even when they're not a client, they become advocates. And I've had a few clients like that where they're never going to become a client, or not anytime soon anyway. They just weren't in the right place. So I just switched and said, I'm just going to give them as much value as I can to help them in this moment. And I've created a few free tools for the people that typically just I can't help right now. But this tool will get them where they need to. But next, and maybe in the future, but as you say, they're always there in the background, cheerleading my content, leaving reviews on Google and things like this, which is just really helpful and great in the meantime. And nice that they I always try and leave people with the right, going away with more than they came to, more than they expected, regardless.
Yep.
But
So you touched on something that I just wanted to expand on for 2 seconds. You said,
yeah.
Having a freebie. And I know the early stage coaches think they need to have all these things ready before they get out there. They need to have the free offer in case someone blah, blah, blah. This is where the skill of co-creating the close is so important, knowing how to navigate these conversations. So just an example that came to mind that I just wanted to riff on for 2 seconds. Say you get someone on the phone that's not 100% right fit, but you're like, you know what? I just need to give them a training on blah, blah, blah. I haven't created it yet. You don't have to hang up and go create it and send it to them. You can co-create a close. Hey, you know what? I don't think that this is you don't need the whole kit and caboodle. You don't need this. Actually, I just need to get these thoughts out of my head. You can be the first one to kind of take this training. What would be a reasonable fee? I think I can crank this out with you in about an hour. Where would you want to meet me? Because this would be beneficial for me to get this content out of my head and into a recording. Obviously, it would be beneficial for you to sit there and hear it and have a Q&A. What would you want your investment to look like? They could come back and say $25 and you're like, that's awesome. Could you do 30? Never end on their number. And then great, you just made $30 to create a free thingamajiggy that now you can give away for free. Win, 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 win. When you know how to co-create a close, you're set for life. Set for life.
I love that. And I think that comes back to what you were saying earlier in our discussion about, the clients not always knowing the right thing. And sometimes it takes a while to find that right product. And it's the same. Sometimes it takes the right, some time to have those conversations to figure out the right little gaps to fill for people, so that you can kind of plug that gap, but move them along the journey, because often they come back or support you in some way. And I love that idea of co-creating a new product with them, to kind of give that service and still make a sale in the process.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be something that now, oh my God, I created another product line, I have to go sell it and market it. No, you don't. No, you don't. You got paid to give value. Great. That's called being an entrepreneur, period. Yeah. Full sentence.
The last thing I'd like to ask you about is follow-up. So we say not everybody becomes a client, not everybody accepts that first sales call. How often, or how do you advise approaching the follow-up process so that we can continue to give value and not feel like a complete nag?
Well, so there's a few mindset shifts around that. They're already a client. So they're already a client. So we always serve as if they're already a client, because they are to some degree, whether they're an advocate and they're sending you people, whether they're a cheerleader showing up on your lives and liking and everything. We need all of them. They're adding value as we're adding value. So they're always already a client. When it comes to follow up, again, it's that masculine energy. So we really need to reframe the way that we look at that. And it's really just loving on them and building a relationship over the long term. I mean, when you flip the script and you look at it that way, they're already a client. There's nothing to follow up with. They're already a client. You don't follow up with your existing clients. They're already a client. So then it's just a function of, okay, well, what does that time frame look? How often do I love on them, et cetera, et cetera? Well, another key strategy is, so I've given you the three main things, which is they're already a client, 80, 15, 5. And then the third thing that can send you on your way like a rocket ship is that you always book a something from a something.
Yeah.
And again, you're co-creating it. So you're on the phone with Sally. It didn't work out to enroll in the program. You gave her the 2 to, take 2 and call me in the morning. She's good. All right, awesome. When should we circle back on this? Why don't pull up your calendar? Let's get something on the calendar for like 3 weeks out, 6 weeks out, just so we have that anchor to kind of keep the conversation going. I teach this strategy in sales school, and I had a client that was doing this, and she didn't fully believe me, but she was like, all right, whatever. So she worked with her client for 3 months at $5,000. That's what I teach, power positioning. Worked with a client for 3 months at $5,000. The client didn't re-up. I was like, that's cool. She's already a client. Don't worry about it. Book something to keep the conversations going. She ended up, I think it was, they had 3 conversations kind of scheduled 3 weeks apart. And they turned into kind of like coaching calls and just like, having conversation calls and just loving on her. How are you? What's going on? How's life? How can I continue to support you right now? And then it happened. She was like, I'm ready. You've never sold me. You never anything, but I'm ready now. Another one of the just let me just check in to see how you're doing turned into a, I'm ready to go. Here's my card for $5,000. What? Okay. Didn't see that coming. All right, let me write it down. It's just you co-create that with someone. When you're in the energy of I need to follow up with them, I need to stay on top of them, sweetheart, that's about you with love. And then when we're in sales energy, not service energy. A rule of thumb is, have you touched base with the people that you like and you want to keep in touch with at least once a quarter? Create a spreadsheet. You don't have to get a fancy Confusionsoft. Create a spreadsheet with their name, with Q1 2021 on top of it. You've got 4 columns. When did you touch base with them in Q1? When did you touch base with them in Q2? That's all you need to do.
I have something even more basic.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. I write a sheet out for every sales call. I always make good notes so that when I follow up, and I put on there questions like, ask them about this the next time you touch base. And then I have a folder and it's got 1 to 12 and on the divisions. And I just move that piece of paper on 4 months. And then I just open my folder and I've got a list of all the people to follow up with, because I'm totally old school. I make all these spreadsheets and forget what they were, where they are, my little folder, and I just move people on. It's great. And it's so nice when you start a month and you already have this nice wad of people to speak to.
Where did we subscribe to the belief that everything has to be fancy and automated and online and complicated? Like, here's my $250,000 calculator. This thing made me $250,000. Look at it. So this works.
Yeah. Do you know, my dad works, he used to be an IT director for the bank's automated clearing system in the UK. And he's like, do you know, I just really wish there were more women in IT, because men just make things so complicated. Yeah. Women would always just come in and say, yeah, but how can this be simpler? How can I just do this in like 5 minutes? I can't be bothered. And he's like, where are all these women? We need more women in IT and technology to simple.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Simplicity is key, because if it's too complicated, we're not going to do it again. And then it's going to feed our squirrel that says, it's not working. Let's go do this over here. And it really, there's a few things that you need to do in business for it to be successful. You need to talk to people. You need to ask them questions. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's really it. It's boring.
A plan.
Yeah.
The other boring thing, but yeah, having a plan, but keep that plan simple. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. That's like my buzzword is like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And like always ask, how could this be simpler? And if something just feels too overwhelming for one reason or another, I just like ask myself, how could this be simpler? Go for a walk. And then I sit back down at my desk and like, oh, I just need to do this. And suddenly it appears.
Exactly. Simple, simple, simple.
Liz, you have shared so much value. I've loved this conversation. Is there any last piece of information or wisdom you would like to share with people out there that we haven't touched on yet, or something you'd like to highlight that we've already covered?
I think it's where we just kind of landed, is that the simplicity feels like we're not doing enough, because we've been conditioned that if we're working, it has to be hard, or if it's valuable, it has to be hard or feel difficult or challenging. This is also why we undervalue what it is that our skill set and ability really is. I didn't think I was ever good at sales. It was my clients that were pointing it out to me. I had no idea. They started calling me the queen of closing. I was like, not exactly. But then the evidence started to build, et cetera, because it's easy for me. It's so easy for me. So the easier it can be, I mean, sticky notes, simple, a filing system with pieces of paper that you wrote on. It doesn't have to be in Asana or Confusionsoft or anything like that. We have to focus less on how it looks or what seems to be sexy or what a VA would do or something like that. And the only thing we ever need to focus on, the purpose of a business, is to create a customer, and a customer is someone who pays you. Period. That is the only thing you need to be focused on. Other than that, with love, you're playing business, and that's sweet, but just be honest with yourself and stay out of the way of us that are actually building businesses.
I love that. And you're right. I mean, there's so many women giving amazing value out there and not charging. Just stop it.
Stop it.
Focus.
Co-create the close, and when you co-create the close, you never have to worry about what you're charging. It becomes a non-issue. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Liz, thank you so much for being so generous with everything you've shared. I mean, it's really been really enlightening, and I know a lot of people have been out there taking heaps of notes. But for anyone out there, I'm going to put all of your contact details below in the show notes so people can get in contact with you if they want more information or more help with this. But for anyone who's out there on the road or going for their walk, trying to keep things simple, how can they find you?
120k.club. It's the 120K club for women entrepreneurs, because again, keeping it simple. When I talk to women about where they want to be in their business, they all say 6 figures. And again, I pull out my calculator and I'm like, how do I type in 6 figures? It's not a number. So the entrepreneurial minimum wage, I just make it simple and I tell you, we're going to first work on getting you to 120,000. From there, we can expand, but that's why it's the 120K club for women entrepreneurs. It's our free Facebook group. We say all the things in there, so come play and join the party.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Liz.
Thank you.